tomorrow we'll speak more about the financial aspects, which I think are important. I think big changes in mentality have a strange form. They happen relatively fast, and when for a long time everybody knew that the world was flat, then should we say 40 people changed their mind and understand it was round, and then a whole new generation grows up knowing that it's round. Right? It's a bit like that. And in economics and politics, this is what I call the 1848 moment. And I think we are in one of those. And then the few people who change their mind are important. And the head of the EU think tank in Joint Research Center in Ispra in Italy, he quotes me and he says that the problem with economics is that the world is flat and round at the same time. It's just that the fashions haven't changed. We go back and forth. There is no progress, and in that sense, that is not lasting progress. Today is election day in Georgia, and it will be very interesting to see what comes out of it, because also there is a big array of parties, but I think there is really a shift going on. I've only been there once, but I, the people who were there, who had invited me there, it was the Union of Municipalities of all things. They kind of described this change, and when I went and visited the Prime Minister, he placed himself as a centrist, and everybody was surprised because they thought he was very neoliberal. So we are in the middle of this change, and I think it's important for the Ukraine to, and I think it's happening here too. I think we see it. What happened in Parliament on Monday was clearly very important. But I'm just going to give you the roots of this. That for a very long time, everybody was convinced that the world was a zero-sum game. If some people got richer, it meant that some other people had to get poorer. So this was the medieval mindset. And then comes the discovery of astronomy, and there is an understanding that actually the whole universe may be expanding. That a whole new mentality comes in, and it comes into the social sciences via astronomy, really. And people like Giordano Bruno in Italy, and Copernicus was an economist and an astronomer. He also has theories of money. So then, with the Renaissance comes the idea that we can actually improve. The pie can grow, right? And a very important input into this was the Turks took over Constantinople, and many philosophers fled to Italy. And one of the philosophers fleeing to Italy, his name was, well, they call him, he had a complicated Greek name, but his name is Plato. And Plato came to the West, and obviously in Constantinople they had read the Bible differently. And he said, well, listen, you haven't understood this. God created the universe, and then he rested on the seventh day. And he says that we are created in the image of God. Well, if we created in the image of God, we have to try to imitate it. Right? And what is the most typical thing about God? Well, it has to be his creativity. Created everything. So therefore, it is our pleasurable duty to invent new things. So innovation became a duty, right? And it was a pleasurable duty because it's fun to discover new things, right? And people were saying, well, God has made some kind of incentive system. In order for us to populate the earth, to have many children, He has built some kind of incentive system into this, into having children, right? So they were reading these intentions of God into what they should believe. So creativity and populating the earth were important things. And then comes a very important thing with the role of money. We're going to talk about more of that tomorrow. But if you look if you read the Bible, there's a concept of mammon, and mammon is kind of bad money. That's money which is not circulating, right? And you remember the story about the master who leaves for a long holiday and leaves his servants or slaves, according to the language, and he gives 5 talents to one and 3 to another and 2 to the last one. And the last one buries the money. And burying the money is really bad. You should give the money. The master says, "You bad servant, you should have given the money to the money lenders so that the money can be usefully employed." So on the one hand, if you look at the religion, we have Jesus throwing the money lenders out of the temple, but we also have this story where the Bible says, give the money to the money lenders, let it work. And mammon is the kind of money that you bury in the ground. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But here, very early on, this is I think the first real, well, according to Schumpeter, this is the first treaty of economics. So Antonio Serra wrote this in a jail in Naples in 1613. He was helped by the Jesuits, we think, because the publisher who published his book also published Jesuit books, and he was in jail. He wrote the book. He was allowed to present his work to the viceroy. They all laughed at him, sent him back to jail, where he died a year later. Kind of a sad story. And there are about 7 copies of this book that we know about. It's a very, very rare book. And it was discovered about 140 years later, and when the first professors, Genovesi in Naples, rediscovered the book and said, hey, this is a guy who was 150 years ahead of his time. So what does he say? The title explains it. A brief treatise on the causes which may make gold and silver abound in countries also where there are no mines. So, all the gold and silver that flowed in from the Americas to Spain left Spain and ended up in Venice, Florence, Amsterdam, Genoa also. His question is, why does the gold end up where there are no mines? Why doesn't the gold stay there? And he says, well, the thing is, what do these cities have? They have manufacturing industry. So he says, the reason that the money ends up in these cities and leaves Spain, Spain got poorer by all this. And he explains that very well, and he explains this key mechanism which I'll get to. In 2013, we have a little fan club, of Antonio Serra fan club, which is about as many people as in this room, or slightly fewer. And this is, I think, what we should do with Dugan Baranovsky, by the way. Okay. I have this hobby of making statues and memorial plates of of famous economists. And what normally happens is that I suggest, well, I'll pay for it, nobody else pays for it. And then somebody else comes in and pays for it. This was actually the Banco di Napoli, the Bank of Naples, actually put up this memorial plaque. Antonio Serra, who was jailed in the jail of La Vicaria, on the 10th of July 1613, he published the first scientific work in economics. This is what Schumpeter is saying. This is the first scientific work. And the University of Naples and the bank put up this plaque. So we have a very important development economist who is Estonian, Ragnar Nurkse, and when we had the 100th anniversary of his birth, we had the Estonian post office published a stamp, and the Estonian central bank put up a plaque where he was born. And we had Torstein Veblen, who was an important Norwegian economist. We had a plaque set up of 150th anniversary. So this is a way to attract. So I think we should look into Tugan Baranovsky, and we still have time. You know, who can speak to the post office? You know, do they? Can we convince them into making a stamp for the centenary of Mr. Tugan Baranovsky? Could we get a plaque or a statue somewhere? You know, there is this bust that but that's not here in Kiev. So I think it's important. Yeah. So I think it is important also because what the West is trying to do with the former East is to take away all pride in a way. I think it's almost a systematic attempt to take away everything that these countries can be proud of, and I think Russia was is in a sense even worse. You know that with the Olympics in Sochi, the new Norwegian Prime Minister went there, and the only thing she talked about with President Medvedev was homosexuality. Nothing else. And Medvedev, who was a great friend of Norway, he got so mad he didn't even show up at the press conference. And then I discovered that this is something that many seemingly was almost coordinated by NATO. That this was, everyone did this. This is not to defend Russia, but this is to say that it's a very you have to assert your own national pride. That's what I'm saying, right? And there's a lot to be proud of here. And Tugan Baranovsky is one, and this is one way of changing the discourse. You know, again, you know, not to defend Russia. It's just that was an extreme. That was an extreme case. So Mr. Serra actually had two dichotomies, which was lost in neoclassical economics: the financial economy versus the production economy, and increasing returns versus diminishing returns. So Naples was very rich in natural resources but very poor, and he wrote in Naples. And his the guy he was writing against, a certain Mr. DeSantis was trying to fix the problems of Naples by muddling with financial variables. You know, he was trying to improve the economics of Naples by manipulating finance, exchange rates, things like that. And Schumpeter says, well, you can't do that. Serra says you can't do that. You have to do it in the real. You have to work in the real economy. And Schumpeter's understanding of Serra, which I think is very good, he says Serra is saying that if you take care of the real economy, the financial economy will take care of itself. Right? But you cannot, if you are a successful country, you'll have a positive balance of payment, etc., etc. You know, you don't have to worry about that. So he will say that the most important thing was the real economy. And this was lost with, continental European economists had focused on production, English focused on trade. Right? So the Germans would say to the English that the English are a country of shopkeepers, and the English would say back to the Germans, Germany is a country of bloody university professors, right? So there's kind of the insults, classical insults going across the channel. And then we come to a very important point, which I think which has to be understood: increasing versus diminishing returns. So, and the third thing is constant returns to scale, and this is crucial. If the Ukraine only produces wheat, and that's the only thing you do, sooner or later you will have to employ land which is not as good as the best land. You will start growing wheat up in the mountains. Right? So after a certain point, if you specialize, your productivity goes down. And the same thing happens in mines. And this is what this Swedish gentleman understood in the 1750s.
Specialize on raw materials and specialize in manufacturing until productivity goes up.
That's right. And this is what Serra saw. Right? And if we take the intermediate example, constant returns, which is kind of neutral. If you ask a painter to paint a house, and he gives you a price of 100, and then you say, this house next to this one is exactly identical, in identical state. How much are you going to charge me to paint the second house? And the painter will say, well, the same. The work is the same. Right? And that's constant returns to scale. That the cost doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, it stays the same. We can always argue with the painter that, well, the ladder that you use and the brushes that you can use them also in the second house. And if you start quarreling, we'll say, okay, I'll give you, instead of 100, I'll charge you 99, right? So, because theoretically there are some fixed costs that could be also used on the second house, but essentially it's the same thing. Then you have the increasing returns, which is what Serra describes. And think of Bill Gates. Bill Gates produces Windows 16 or whatever you want to call it, and that costs him $500 million to pick a number. And so unit number one costs you $500 million. Unit number two, if you distribute it electronically, it probably costs you 10 cents. So all the other copies, copy number one, $500 million, all the other copies, 10 cents. People like that are this is increasing returns to scale. Not always as extreme as that, but it's cost going down. And people with that cost structure are very difficult to compete with. It's very easy to compete with a house painter. That's why there are so many more house painting businesses than people competing with Bill Gates, right? Because this cost structure gives what in business economics is called barriers to entry. How difficult is it to get to establish yourself in a business? To establish yourself in a truck driving business requires much less capital than to establish yourself in cargo air business. That's why there are many more trucking companies than air cargo companies, right? So this determines these increasing returns and diminishing returns. Really, this is what makes manufacturing so different. It's not manufacturing per se, because this can also happen in advanced services. The problem is that the advanced services also need the market of manufacturing. So you're still back to the fact that you need that you need manufacturing. So Serra was saying that he was describing Venice, which was rich, and he says that when the Venetians go into manufacturing, which they specialize in manufacturing, and when they increase their productivity, when they increase their volume of production, they increase their They lower their costs, and if their costs go down, they can both sell cheaper and increase their own wages. And since they sell even more cheaper, then they attract businesses from all over the world. So this is the virtuous circle. Your costs go down, and you can increase your prices, and your costs still go down, and your competitiveness goes up. Right? And then he also describes what we would call synergy. He also describes that Venice can do this specialization because there's so many different professions. So these people in the 1600s were actually saying, it's almost as if they were saying, if you want to understand how wealthy a city is, go into the city and count the number of professions. You know, the higher the number of professions, the richer the city. And you know, that applies today. If you go into Kampala in Uganda and count the number of professions, you know, it's much lower than on Manhattan. Right? So these are very important insights. But the problem was that when economics got formalized, the first neoclassical economist, Alfred Marshall, in 1890, they chose a metaphor from physics, from old-fashioned physics, which was equilibrium. Right? And if you throw increasing returns into that, there is no equilibrium. So the economists, because of the tool they have chosen, had to kick out increasing returns. Right? Because it would ruin their equilibrium. And this is an important reason why neoclassical economics became such an important tool for neocolonialism. That the factor which distinguished manufacturing from agriculture was thrown out. Right? And this is why why neoclassical economics is such an important tool. Paul Krugman managed to, in the 1980s, managed to create a model just like Serra. He didn't refer to Serra, but he many economists have done that. This is what my thesis in 1980 was about. I actually went out to the world and read Serra, found him in the library, thought him was very interesting, and tried to see if it really worked. So in 1978, 79, I spent my time in Bolivia with the tin industry, tin mining, in Peru with cotton, and in Ecuador with bananas, and try to see if the world actually behaved like Serra had said, and it did. So you had, in tin mining in Bolivia, you could really see it when production contracted. In the 1930s, the volume of the demand for tin went down, and productivity skyrocketed. Why? Well, because they closed the most marginal mines first. No, that's a very logical decision. If you're a mining company, demand goes down, you close the worst mines first, and you stay with the best mines. So, and it happened with cotton in Peru, and it happened with the bananas in Ecuador. So this is, if you put these factors in, increasing and diminishing returns, it's very easy to make a model showing that some countries will specialize in being poor. It really explains that Somalia, Korea thing. Right? So the problem is that the economists have locked themselves into their own tool shed. And the problem is also that this theory that they produced was in somebody's interest. It was in somebody's interest to believe in that, right? And this is the interesting thing with the United States, that when this was still only based on Ricardo's bartering of labor hours, the Americans called the bluff. And the Americans were saying, well, when the United States has 100 million people, when Philadelphia is the greatest manufacturing industry in the world, and when the U.S. Navy dominates the world, then our grandchildren's grandchildren will declare free trade. And that happened around 1916. So they saw this 100 years earlier. And they also refer to the Bible. And they say, well, in the Bible there are some tribes of Israel who are the hewers of wood, the drawers of water and the hewers of wood. Those who were making a living carrying water and chopping wood. Right? We don't want, the Americans say, we don't want to be the people in the world chopping wood and carrying water for the others. We want to advance, right? And in a sense, so these arguments, they come back in history time and time again, but from a slightly different point of view. But the core problem, the core issue is increasing versus diminishing return. This is why Mr. Yufin Lin, who was Justin Lin, who was the chief economist of the World Bank up until about a couple of years ago, he wasn't that for a long time, he said, no country in the world has ever got rich without a manufacturing sector, except some oil-producing countries.